हाणे आउं गुज़ारिश कंदुसि डॉक्टर ज़फ़र मुहियुद्दीन खे, जेके पाण सरगोदा यूनिवर्सिटी खां आया आहिनि ऐं पाण असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर आहिनि हिस्ट्री ऐं पाकिस्तान स्टडी जा, त अची पंहिंजो मुख़्तसिर पेपर पेश कनि।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सब तो पहले तो माँ बोली ज़बान दे आलमी डी दे हवाले नाल मैं सिंध लैंग्वेज अथॉरिटी और उन्होंने टीम को मुबारकबाद पेश करे सा ते जदीद टेक्नोलॉजी दे हवाले नाल ज़बाना ते खसूसन अमर साहब दे पोस्ट ह्यूमनिज़म दी हवाले नाल इतनी शानदार मुकालत बाद मैं तो थोड़ा तारीख गिन वैसा तारीख दे तालिब इल्म दी हैसियत नाल। द टाइटल of my paper is Sufis and the Development of Indigenous Languages in Medieval South Asia. As we know that Sufism, also known as the Tasawwuf, is a mystical tradition of Islam, and it developed in early centuries of Islam. Indian subcontinent was among those regions where Sufis started their activities quite early, and the Ghaznawide conquest in 11th century and later Mongol invasion in 13th century accelerated the migration of Sufis in North India, especially the parts Punjab, Multan and some parts of Sindh. The Sufis belonging to different Sufi silsilas established their khanqahs in the urban centers of India, and with the passage of time many of these khanqahs transformed into shrine and played important role in process of acculturation. In Muslim societies, the Sufis contributed in making Islam compatible with local cultural and linguistic tradition, and they played role in developing local languages in medieval South Asia. Most of the Sufis were migrants in India, but made themselves conversant in indigenous languages. And in the era of dominant Arabo-Persian linguistic tradition of the ruling elite, Sufis produced literature in vernacular languages and dialects and produced vernacular poetry to interact with the local population. Sufis not only introduced various literary genres in local languages, but also facilitated the development of new scripts. The Sufi khanqahs, an institution, were the places where people of different backgrounds, speaking different languages, used to interact with each other. And the Sufis learned vernacular languages and local dialects to develop a better communication system with local visitors of the khanqah. As language was an important tool to understand the issues and problems of the common man and to connect with them. The institution of Khanqah accommodated the local Indian traditions, languages and culture, and played an important role among bridging different racial, cultural and religious groups. And in these Khanqahs, natives were instructed in native languages, and Sufis, instead of Persian and Arabic, they employed local languages and dialects to reach the common people. Even some of the Sufis argued that Friday khutbah, must be read in local languages. For better understanding of common people, Maulvi Abdul Haq, the known figure on Urdu literature, he is of the view that evolution of Urdu as a common medium of communication was the result of interaction of different migrants and natives in Sufi khanqahs. Baba Farid and Sheikh Hamiduddin, the famous 13th century Sufis, conversed and composed poetry in local languages, and during 14th century Sufis brought a linguistic revolution when they produced literature in vernacular languages. Especially we know the figures of Amir Khusrau and Amir Hassan al-Sizzi, the famous Sufis of 13th century. And Baba Farid, the renowned Chishti Sufi used to prescribe zikr in Punjabi language, local language. And he is believed to be the first poet of Punjabi language. All of us know that some of his verses are incorporated in Guru Granth Sahib, a sacred scripture of Sikhs. Baba Ashlok Baba Farid के उसके टाइटल से. Baba Farid Punjabi poetry influenced local population, and he is the most venerated Sufi in Punjab. And through his conduct as well as through his poetry, preached the inclusiveness and rejected false egoism. जैसे कि वो कहते हैं कि फरीदा काले मेरे कपड़े काला मेरा वेश, गुनाह भरा मैं फिरां लोग कहें दरवेश. Farid laden with my loads of misdeeds, I move wearing black garments, and the people see me and call me a dervish. It was the rejection of false egoism. And the same theme and the approach is adopted by the Sufis of Sindh as well. Sufis of Punjab developed a distinct genre of Sufi poetry called Kafi, a distinct literary genre of Punjabi as well as Sindhi vernacular poetry based on regional folk melodies. Different Sufis like Shah Hussain of Punjab, he is considered the first among the Punjabi Sufi poets who wrote in Kafis. He popularized, इसी तरह Baba Bulle Shah, known as a Rumi of the Punjab, he popularized Kafi in the Punjab and questioned and denounced the birth-ascribed identities in his poetry. He says, ना मैं अरबी ना लाहौरी, ना मैं हिंदी शहर नगोरी, ना हिंदू ना तुर्क पिशौरी, बुल्ला की जाना मैं कौन. At another place he says, इसी थीम पे चल बुलिया चल उत्थे चलिए, जिथे सारे अन्ने, ना कोई साड़ी जात पहचाने, ना कोई सानू मन्ने. Let's go Bulia to the land where nobody asks about your creed and caste. And the same theme is adopted by the Sufis in Sindh as well, like Shah Abdul Latif and Sachal Sarmast. Another Punjab Sufi of Punjab, Sultan Bau, composed poetry in Punjabi along with Persian, and he is known for his Punjabi Seharfis, a new genre in poetry. Khaja Ghulam Farid is considered the most celebrated poet of Saraiki language, whose poetry is sung in Punjab as well as in Sindh. The Punjabi Sufi poet also contributed in Qissa literatures like Mian Muhammad Baksh, Saiful Malook, इसी तरह वारिस शाह, हीर रांझा. In Sindh, Ismaili Peers contributed a lot in Sindhi literature, like Peer Sadruddin is one of the most important figure in Ismaili Dawa. He composed ginans in Lari and Kachi languages, written in Khojki script. He played an important role in the popularization of Khojki script of Sindhi language. Later on, his son, Peer Hassan Kabiruddin, also contributed in Ginan literature. Shah Latif is truly loved by the people for his humanistic and melodious compositions. He popularized Kafis in Sindhi language, and he followed Persian tradition but blended it with local legends and folks tales and enriched the local language. Another Sufi of Sindh, Sheikh Abdul Wahab, popularly known as Sachal Sarmast, wrote Kafis in Sindhi language. He also wrote in Saraiki, Persian and Urdu, and elaborated the complex concept of Wahdatul Wujud in local language, and through his medium of poetry rejected sectarianism. जैसे कि वो फरमाते हैं, ना मैं सुन्नी ना मैं शिया, पाप नहीं न सवाब, ना मैं शरी ना मैं वरी ना मैं रंग रबाब, ना मैं मुल्ला ना मैं काजी ना मैं शोर शराब, ज़ात से चल दी के पुछ दे नाले ते नायाब. Sufis also played important role in the development of new literary genres or improving the existing ones. The role of the Sufis in developing literary genres like Seharfi and Kafi in Punjabi and Sindhi poetic tradition, or Prem Kahani, Sufi romances, and Ginan literature is remarkable. The Sufi poetry in particular acquired the form of popular songs or work songs sung by the women in villages while doing their domestic tasks. And to conclude, the Sufi poets implied indigenous literary motifs and in the process indigenized their poetry to the literary taste of their local audiences. The Sufis kept in mind the linguistic and phonetic features of local languages and dialects while composing poetry, and they tried to pull down the language barrier in order to make Sufi tradition more simple and indigenized, and they enabled local people to relate these tradition to their culturally grounded belief system. And through the production of genres of Sufi literature in vernacular languages, Sufi contributed a lot in the development of indigenous languages in South Asia. Thank you very much.